Right, so welcome back everyone, and we're just going to be reconvening this additional council meeting, and we've just got the one item left on the agenda, which is the annual report presentation from Waitaki District Health Services Limited. And so we've got Chairman of the Board, Mark here with his team.
Helen.
So I'll let you do all of the introductions if you like, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Happy to hand Paul Allison's responsibility. So happy for you to do the introductions. And,
thank you very much. We have Helen Elgar, Deputy Chair, attending, Paul Allison, Director by Zoom, Phil Jamieson, Chief Executive, and Rod Grant, CFO as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present. We've got a slideshow presentation there which we'll reference to. That will cover off the 12 months that we're reporting to, and then we've got a brief summary in there as well regarding the strategic plan forward. So if we move to the first slide, year in review. The 2019-20 financial year was a game of two halves. There was the focus on the assurances and quality outcome in the first half, and then
so, because can I just clarification? What year are we looking at in terms of the reports? We've got two. There's one on the council agenda for the 2018-19 year,
yes,
and another one for.
So the 18-19 year, due to Audit New Zealand's timeframes around the sign-off of the accounts, those have just been signed off now for the 18-19. So we're presenting those to be tabled and accepted as the final accounts, but we were reporting on the 19-20 year in terms of performance with the draft accounts having been provided.
So the 18-19 year has been delayed because the Office of the Auditor General,
the Observatory Village.
Observatory Retirement Village was a linked entity in some way. Black magic, trying to understand it, but anyway, it is what it is, and they make the rules. So there has been a lot of going back over the accounts from that year for the Observatory Retirement Village and getting them fully audited, as opposed to the normal audit process they go through, and then they get consolidated into the Waitaki District Health Services accounts, which is, to be very honest, is takes away transparency, but that's the way they want it. And in the meantime, we'll try and we'll work our way through and with the focus on this most recent year, because that's the one of most relevance to us.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify what
Apologies for that.
numbers I was looking at. Thank you.
So the group income of 21 million was up from 18.7, driven by growth in the DHB income and resident contributions from Observatory Village, and the costs of 21.1 million versus 18.8 from the previous year. Net operating deficit of 162k was primarily attributed to the increase in costs outstripping the increased revenue. Patient volumes were in line with the year before, and continued support from donations and philanthropy assisted to get us through. We had critical leadership changes, including the appointment of our new CEO and clinical director as well. So the financial highlights, we've got the group delivered good income and overall profit growth. Observatory Village is coming on stream, new contracts and expansion of current contracts within the hospital, and significant growth in the value of assets under our control. Costs increased at a faster rate than income, and that's primarily the locum staffing pressures. In particular, personnel costs 0.8 million across the group, locum costs of 0.7, and audit fees have gone up significantly, which was driven by that Office of the Auditor General decision. We've broken down the financial highlights to provide the transparency that a group consolidation doesn't necessarily provide. So we've got the hospital 13 million income, trust 24 $8 million for the Observatory Village. The costs as listed there for the hospital were 15.8 with an operating surplus or deficit, of 2.8 million. Revaluation gains of 900,000 giving comprehensive income of 1.9 million. And the operating cash flow, once you take depreciation out and other non-cash items, was a deficit of 1.567 million. I'll leave the other numbers there to take as read. Revenue growth from new contracts with the DHB and ACC were important. Core funding from Ministry of Health was effectively stagnant, and the overall growth in income is in line with inflation. Wage costs were in line with the previous year, but the increase in locum costs, which previously noted, required to fully staff the hospital and provide full service. Here we have a breakdown of the medical costs, which is obviously significant. So we've got a comparison there, 2017 through to 2020. And you can see by those bottom numbers, the significant increases driven predominantly in the locum area, 550% since 2017. And expected recoveries in the current year, reduction in costs to 2.7 million as locums are replaced by employees. If fully staffed, expected ongoing medical costs will be 2.5 million, which will bring it back to a more manageable. And the final slide in the reporting aspect is the balance sheet. So significant growth in the value of the assets on hand by 10%, funding by way of increased liabilities to suppliers and residents, operating cash flows of 3.6 million utilised for investment into the group assets, especially the development of Observatory Village, and borrowings from Waitaki District Council by the hospital during the year, which we greatly appreciated. And if we move now to the outlook and strategy, I'll pass over to Phil.
So I'm going to split this into two sections, is just to look at the outlook and the environment impacting on Waitaki District Health Services Limited, and then also a top of mind strategy, just given it's 41 days in the role, so this is developing. So in terms of outlook, it's no understatement to say we live in an uncertain world, and local economy still, or environment still heavily impacted by COVID in terms of the impact on our community and our teams, both in terms of the impact of normal operations on the health services that we provide and the volume throughput that we have, but notwithstanding the impact from a health perspective on the community. We have a new government in place. They've signalled through the Simpson report reviews of healthcare. We have to be a leading light in terms of what that means in terms of rural and community health, the common elements for Waitaki, but also the specific elements given the ageing nature of our population and also the ethnic mix of our population. We are attracting strong clinical doctor candidates. I'd like to say it's because of me. I don't think that's the case. I think COVID is presenting a really unique situation, but we are hopeful to have offers out to doctors who will be residing in the Waitaki. They're qualified fellows of the Rural Hospital Medicine College and also of emergency doctors. So address, I think, the financial pressure or fiscal pressure, but really importantly in the medium term is to ensure that we're delivering quality outcomes to the community of Waitaki. In terms of the strategy, and this is a cake that's being baked, so some of the recipe is there, others are not, as I learn. It's really simple in terms of our focus. We're here to provide trusted quality and, if we probably add, sustainable health services to our community. Inherent in that is focusing on what is our model of care now and going forward. So priority one is actually defining what Waitaki's model of care is going to look now, 3 and 5 years' time. That's not only getting the people in place, which is critical, but also process systems and technology. Improving population or community health. Hospitals cannot, excuse the cliche, continue to be the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. We need to be more proactive in our outreach and our proactive healthcare within the community. And the starter of that is actually understanding the community through data, insight, and talking to people. Drive sustainable outcomes. Healthcare, unfortunately, is a business. We have to operate within fiscal constraints, and how we balance that with our patient outcomes and also making our environment a great place to work for our dedicated team, which comes to our 4th priority in terms of transforming our culture. And finally, to recognise the power of the group. We are sovereign, we are Waitaki District Health Services, but there's a lot that we share in common with our other 19 rural healthcare providers. There's a lot that we share in common with the council, and how do we bring that power of working together as one more strongly through. So just a little report card in terms of progress after 41 days. As I said, in terms of leading the Waitaki healthcare model, we are making solid progress towards the appointment of permanent docs for continuity of care and fiscal pressures. So we're looking to have close to a full complement in the first quarter of the next calendar year. Improving population health. We've started to more actively engage in dialogue with our community and also looking at the data that we can obtain to understand the needs of our community now and going forward, which should drive the provision of healthcare. Sustainable outcomes. We are in the process of the implementation of systems and knowledge to improve, say, for example, the leverage of our contracts with the likes of ACC and better disciplines around that, and also with the SDHB. Transforming our culture, really the key thing is stability, and stability in terms of senior staffing and leadership, and reinforcing to our team that change will be a constant in this environment. It doesn't have to be tectonic, but we're in an age of where healthcare is changing and will continue to change. As I said, and finally leveraging the group, one example of that is we are looking at one of the challenges for doctoring is how do you cover rosters when you've got annual leave, overtime, etc. is looking at a joint swing doctor resource with Dunstan where we can form a value proposition. They're not a competition. It can improve our quality of care without having to tap into locums. 3 key outcomes: financial value, got to be sustainable, patient and customer outcomes or community, and finally team outcomes. The simple logic is a happy team is going to be in a better position to provide good outcomes to patients, which ultimately should look after the financials and the economics. That's a brief run over of strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. And I should say, welcome to Council Chamber, Phil. It is very good having you on board, and the amount of positivity around your appointment, I think, has been really great, and also positive comments about your new clinical director as well. So, it's. I think the ship is turning in that respect, and people are seeing, some really good attitudes within the hospital and the services being given there. So thank you for your major part of that.
Thank you.
Councillors, questions? Councillor Ornstein and then Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you guys for your presentation, and I think the point was made by the Mayor that with the consolidation of the accounts, it actually gives us less transparency between what the hospital's doing, because now rolled into one more hospital, the time we've got to do roll into the one, and trust will roll into one presentation. Couple of 3 points. First of all, can we get a copy of both Mark and Phil, a copy of that presentation, please? There's a lot of information I couldn't assimilate at the time was on the screen. So please, but just on transparency levels, is it possible to still receive a set of accounts for the hospital?
Yes.
As separate from the retirement village, so we can see
Yep.
how each one of them is operating and
Absolutely.
rather than two rolled in, all rolled into
Yeah.
one.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you. And just one more question if I can, thank you, Mayor Kircher. Just that having the retirement village rolled in has made a major difference to the accounts that we are presented with. And one of the larger changes, of course, is the amount owed to the residents of the retirement village. The obligations to residents, 15.9 million. And just on that point, there is a policy of amortisation. And I know I'm just reading note 15 and trying to read what it says. And that seems to say on page 26 that the balance to repay is the amount at the time when a resident leaves. So is the amount of amortisation in the first 3 years recognised in each of those years on the way along? And if so, where does it show in the income of the statement?
Or income, it's in the expenses of what are expected. So it's a liability, so it becomes a reduction of the. Sorry,
You
got the accounts there, sorry?
I've got it. I haven't got
Yeah,
accounts.
it's resident fees and contributions.
It's a resident benefit.
And contributions, yeah.
Okay, so therefore those are not all cash. Some of them are.
Some are all those previous cash you received on the way through. So yeah.
Plus the write down of the value of the return to the resident.
Yep.
Thanks, Rod.
No problem.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Phil, apologies if I missed this. What would the G and DA stand for in your presentation?
Sorry, Councillor Hopkins, is G green,
Yes.
A amber, and
So that is done and on the way to being done. Is that a reason?
no, well, it was really just giving a high level indication of where we're tracking very early to an operating plan.
It seems to me the first one, your WHCM, this is an incomplete statement. It says develop, but it doesn't say what at the bottom it is going to develop. But putting that aside for a moment, if I could ask you or Mark, on page 5 of your report, we've got a whole bunch of employees earning in excess of 100,000.
Yep.
I work it out to be around 1.3 million in total. How many of those people are doctors or nurses?
In the last year,
Well, the one in the report.
that's us. Yep.
I'm looking at now.
there would be 4 at the hospital and 3 at the
Medical staff.
medical staff. Or maybe 2, maybe 2.5.
If you very quickly, if I may, on page 19, am I right? Is this if I'm looking at the down the bottom there, District Health Board revenue, has it really only gone up a little over 100,000?
Yes, there was.
I mean, would you describe that as miserly and unfair?
No, I wouldn't describe it as that.
Right, okay.
No, that's
Tight-fisted, yes, tight-fisted.
commercially constrained.
And there was also the year before they had added some extra contributions to the hospital by the way of supporting interim CFOs and things that weren't repeated. So
Okay.
basically there was stuff that didn't get repeated, but there was a 2% uplift in the actual base contract.
Two more questions, if I may. Very quickly on page 20, the locums. We keep on being told, no, we must get it down. We are getting it down, great progress, but you're not getting it down. It's 2.3 million, or 2.4. Yeah, 2.3.
And that's
when does it start to go down? I mean, are you seeing it tracking down now or not?
Yeah, you go. Yeah.
So we have offers out on the table as we speak, Councillor Hopkins, and that is for permanent doctors either in New Zealand or returning to New Zealand. The timing has been somewhat complicated by the global environment that we're in. So we have, for example, 3 to 4 permanent offers, and we're at final reference check stage.
So what you're saying is you're very close to actually hiring real people.
That's right, real people.
No.
And
Yep, no, that's fine. Look, one other very quick question. It's in the report, so I feel entitled to ask it. Can you just explain on page 27, the rental property provided by N&A Wilson? Which
Yes,
rental property is there?
it's the one that
So
the doctors,
yeah,
yeah,
doctors,
locums.
locums and doctors that have it in their contract.
It's an accommodation for them.
Yes, a house. Basically, it's a house that we use for one of the doctors that has it in their contract.
They get use of that rent free.
As well as part of their remuneration.
Thank you. Thanks.
Right, is there anything left for you, Councillor Tamko?
Sure.
That's right. The only thing I was wanting to know about is the inventory, because in the last financial year you were looking at around 212,000 that was spent on inventory, and it's about half or more than half that this time. Is that sustainable, and is that because your systems and processes are improved, or is there an anomaly in that?
Sorry, it's probably good to, because there's systems there, wasn't there?
It's both of those answers. One in the fact that we had 3 or 4 different places around the hospital where we had stuff stored. We've now concentrated that down to one, so that gets a lot of control over that. So the systems around the counting of the inventory is probably more accurate now than what it was in the past.
Or it is more accurate.
It is more accurate,
That's
yes.
why the
Do
numbers-
you think it is sustainable?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Definitely.
That's good to see.
And then we're working on further activities around better use of medical inventory, for example, bandaging, through to just-in-time and appropriate carrying of expensive drugs, and working with the community, for example, the pharmacy providers, so that we're not doubling up on that critical resource.
Thank you.
Councillor Walmsley.
Yeah, sorry, that's another question, but just go back to your locums, Phil.
Mhm.
Look at locums back in 2018, 371,000, 2020, 2.338 million, almost up by nearly $2 million in those 2 years. How much of that saving do you think you'll make if you can employ permanent doctors rather than paying locums?
Well, an example is a locum comes at a factor of 2 to 1 to a permanent.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a significant saving, but I'd also point out, for the sustainability of healthcare and continuity of healthcare, it's also, don't underestimate the benefit of having someone in a permanent capacity. It is significant.
And it's 700,000 as a total cost. So it's about $700,000 will be the total. So it'll go from 3.2 to 2.5.
It's a major.
It is.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Councillor Halaleli.
Just a question. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are around applying to the Ministry of Health directly for specific funding for one area, as opposed to having our share allocated from some of the HB. I'm aware that there was COVID funding specifically turned for the Pacific, and I know that the Southern HB didn't apply for it. So that leaves us missing out. So I'm just wondering what are your views on accessing some of the funding?
Can I go from high? We would like to access as much funding as we possibly can for the Waitaki district and increase our services to provide as much here as we possibly can. And we need to coordinate and collaborate better with our funders to make sure that someone gets that funding at least. So definitely.
And an example is, for example, the Pacifica community additional funding. I think the first thing is we actually need to work more proactively with the Southern District Health Board and understanding the needs of our specific community. One, what funding is actually available, and then more aggressively chase that funding.
Paul, did you want to add something?
No, nothing in particular. Thank you, Gary. I mean, I was happy to answer any questions that may come from that previous year. I think Mark summed it up reasonably well when we have had some unusual factors, taking away the financial performance, which has hung over us for many years. But the first year, or first part of the year, I think it was encouraging that there was some really positive news coming from an independent perspective around the quality of services and systems internally that was being provided. and some of the work that was planned for the second half of the year got hijacked and disrupted because of COVID. So some of the anticipated wins that we were hoping may have been achieved before the 30th of June never occurred. But I think you'll get some confidence from the outline that Phil has provided around the work that's currently going on to be able to rectify some of that and to address it.
Thank you. Councillor McRoby.
Final question from me. Two things. The DHB revenue post June 2020. How have your negotiations gone then? That's a discussion we've been quite often in the past. How's that? That's the first question.
Oh, we've had effectively a
2.8, wasn't
2.8%, but because of just contracts moving around, it was 2.4 in total over last year. So it's about a $300,000 uplift for the year.
So that's 2021.
2021 year on now, yep.
Right. And the other
And we budgeted 2%, so we got in excess of what we'd budgeted.
Yeah.
last one from me, cash and cash equivalents, I'm just going to jump on the page, have gone up quite substantially. I'm assuming part of that is got an additional bonus facility from ANZ post. What's the position in that regards post?
That's 20.
Thank you. Thanks for going. Page 20. Yeah.
So the cash is mainly held by Zurich Village. In fact, almost all is held by Zurich Village. So in the hospital, the cash is pretty much as it was, but there's probably, I believe, the same money still at Zurich Village that was there at the time. You can't say, yeah.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's good, and it is good to see some of those methods addressed that you mentioned, Phil. And good luck for those. That'll be a major game changer. First quarter of next year. See, so yeah, good. Well done.
Thank you.
Just going through the report, I noticed there was an area missing in documents you presented compared to, we've looked at another set of documents that are going to be presented to us later in the Arvo. But there was one area missing that, in the interests of transparency, I thought might be quite important. Whenever there's money spent by the council on anything services provided by elected members or their families, it's pointed out in a report. And I'm just wondering, is there any situation that services are provided by, for example, a rental property or something like that provided to locums that should be made public in these reports?
It is.
But by elected members, you mean?
For example, for us, it would
Yeah.
be pointed out. But if someone owns a rental property that they are providing to a locum, like a director or...
Yeah, which that was what Councillor Hopkins referenced before.
Oh, is that a director that owns that rental property?
Yes.
Interesting.
That's why I asked.
Ah, okay. What page is that on?
Page 27.
Right. I'm going to ask that we move the report we received, etc. So two recommendations here. Moving that. Do the second, Councillor McRoby. You want to speak to?
I'd just like to ask one question about this is the previous year. There's a reference in there to an interest-free loan from Network Waitaki. What was that for? And it's not in this year's one, so I presume it's been repaid. Is that correct?
It was a loan as part of the Zurich Village building, I believe, and not having precise knowledge that it's something to do with the wiring or the transmission up there.
It was putting the power on.
Yeah.
And may have included undergrounding power lines that used to run through that.
Yeah, it's now been repaid.
So the village will effectively repay it. Yeah, no, thank you. That's all I wanted.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So.
Okay, I'm going to put it, councillors. So those in favour of receive the report, etc. Say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. With that, it draws the end of this meeting to a close. And so thank you very much, everyone, for your participation. And thanks for those who have joined us on the live stream. And apologies for the gap in the middle where we had to leave and come back. But anyway, thank you, everyone, and declare the meeting closed.
Thank you.